The wind scraped across the Wyoming plains like a living thing, sharp and merciless, rattling the loose boards of Wyatt Hale's cabin as though demanding to be let inside. Wyatt rocked his newborn daughter in the dim lamplight, his boots planted firmly on the worn rug, his arms aching from days of holding her. Little June's cries ricocheted off the log walls, high-pitched and desperate, and each one carved deeper into the hollow ache inside Wyatt's chest. 6 weeks. That's all the time he'd had with his daughter, and all the time he'd been without his wife. Clara had died with the sunrise on the day June was born, a weak smile on her face as she whispered, "Take care of her, Wyatt." He remembered every detail, her fingers cooling in his hand, the way June's first cry had been drowned out by his own grief, the last promise he'd never stop trying to keep. But trying was getting harder with every passing day. June's tiny body trembled as she cried, her face scrunched, her lips searching for something she couldn't find. Wyatt warmed milk on the stove over and over, but she turned her head away each time, her instincts screaming for nourishment he couldn't give. She was losing weight, her skin seemed thinner, more fragile. Even her cries lacked the strength they once had. A newborn should have wailed with demand, but June cried like she was pleading. Wyatt held her closer, rocking faster, as if motion alone could soothe her. "Hush now, darlin', Pa here, Pa tryin', just hold on." His voice cracked. He hadn't meant for it to. But exhaustion was a thief, and it stole the firmness from his voice, the steadiness from his hands, even the faith from his heart. He'd ridden into town 2 days ago, begging for help from anyone who'd listen. Old Mrs. Harrington, who once nursed 3 babies of her own, cried with him but admitted her milk had long dried. The midwife, Florence Gray, promised to ask around but said the nearest wet nurse she knew lived nearly a week's ride away. No one else had milk, and even fewer had time. Folks in the small mountain town struggled enough feeding their own families, let alone someone else's child. Wyatt had offered money, supplies, labor, anything, but no one could give what June needed. His cattle were growing restless from lack of attention. Fence posts lay in splintered heaps after the last storm. The barn roof leaked so badly he'd taken to placing buckets along the rafters. Every chore piled up like a weight on his shoulders, and still the most important thing in his life, a 6-pound infant with a tuft of his wife's blonde hair, was starving in his arms. He rocked her until his legs went numb. His forehead pressed against hers as he breathed her in, the faint scent of milk, wool, and something heartbreakingly small. "Don't leave me too," he whispered. "I can't lose you too." June's cries weakened to pitiful whimpers, and that sound nearly took him to his knees. The night worsened, thunder cracked like splitting wood, and lightning ripped across the sky, illuminating the cabin with ghostly flashes. Wyatt forced himself to heat the stove again, though his hands shook with exhaustion. He poured warm milk into a tiny tin cup, dipped a cloth into it, and tried again to coax June to drink. She turned away. Wyatt's breath hitched, and he clenched his jaw to stop the tears he didn't have time to shed. Outside, the storm roared. Inside, June's breathing thinned. Wyatt slumped into the rocking chair, his body giving out long before his will. He cradled June against his chest, his thumbs brushing the soft down of her hair. "Please," he muttered into the dark. "I'll do anything, just don't take her." He didn't know if he spoke to God or Clara or the empty room itself. Then, a knock, sharp, sudden, impossible. Wyatt's head snapped up. No one traveled at night, much less in a storm like this. June stirred weakly against him as another knock followed, fainter, but urgent. Heart hammering, Wyatt laid June gently in her basket and grabbed his rifle. He approached the door slowly, boots muffled by the wind's howl. Lightning flashed again as he pulled the door open a crack. And there she was, a woman, drenched, trembling, her dress clinging to a body far too thin. Hollow cheeks, cracked lips, yet her arms were strong, steady, wrapped around one thing she still possessed. A swollen breast, heavy with milk. Her eyes, sunken but desperate, met his. "Please," she whispered, barely more than breath. "Is there a baby here?" Wyatt's throat closed. "Yes," he rasped. "God help me, yes." Relief flooded her face. Her knees nearly gave out. "Then let me help," she breathed. "Before it's too late." Wyatt guided the frail stranger toward the fire, lowering his rifle the moment he saw her legs threaten to buckle. She moved like someone who had walked far, too far, on too little food, too little hope, too little life left in her bones. But she was steady where it mattered, her arms. They cradled June with the instinctive care of a mother who had held a baby before. Wyatt knelt beside her, though he kept a respectful distance as she settled cross-legged on the rug. June rooted blindly, her tiny mouth searching the air. The stranger's breath hitched at the sight. "She's starving," she murmured, her voice trembling with sorrow. "Just like mine was." The words hit Wyatt like a fist. "Yours." She nodded, her wet hair sticking to her cheeks as she looked down. The firelight flickered across her face, revealing exhaustion etched into every line, every hollow. "He didn't make it," she whispered. "I didn't have enough food, enough strength. The winter was too hard, and I was alone. My body still made milk, but there was no baby left to take it. I walked for days, hoping to find someone, anyone, who needed what I still had left to give." Wyatt swallowed hard, emotion tightening his throat. Losing Clara had nearly destroyed him. Losing a child, he couldn't imagine how this woman was even standing. "Ma'am," he said, voice thick, "you don't need to explain. You're here now, and that's all that matters." She met his gaze, and for a moment, something like gratitude flickered across her features before she glanced away again. She shifted slightly, cradling June with practiced ease, and lifted her shawl for modesty. "Turn around, please." Wyatt obeyed instantly, facing the crackling fire. He closed his eyes as he heard June latch, first a soft, eager sound, then steady suckling, strong and sure. A relieved sigh escaped the woman. Wyatt felt his own shoulders collapse with gratitude he didn't have words for. The cabin filled with peace. Not silence, no, the sounds behind him were the sweetest music he'd ever heard. June drinking, June living, June being given a chance. Wyatt pressed a hand to his forehead, emotion shaking him so hard he had to brace himself on the chair beside him. "Thank you," he whispered, voice barely steady. "Whoever you are, thank you." Minutes passed, long, healing minutes, until June's cries quieted completely, replaced by the soft breaths of a baby finally full. "You can turn around now," the woman said softly. Wyatt did, and the sight nearly brought him to his knees. The stranger, this miracle, held June upright against her shoulder, rubbing gentle circles on her back. The baby's face was content, cheeks no longer sunken but rosy with warmth. Her small fists rested against the woman's collarbone, her tiny body curled in perfect trust. Wyatt's vision blurred, he hurriedly blinked it away. "What's your name?" he asked, quietly. "Alara," she answered, brushing a strand of damp hair behind her ear. Even starved and exhausted, there was a softness to her features that grief hadn't managed to steal. "My name is Alara." "Alara," he repeated, the name settling in his chest. "I'm Wyatt Hale, and this little one is June." Alara smiled at the sleeping baby, her fingers grazing June's cheek with the tenderness only a mother could possess. "She's strong, just needed nourishment." Wyatt nodded. "Please, stay, at least until she's better. I'll give you food, warmth, anything you need." Alara's expression shifted, hope mixing with fear. "I don't want to be a burden." "You saved her life tonight," Wyatt said simply. "There's no burden in that. Not now, not ever." Her eyes glistened. For a moment, she looked like she might refuse, out of pride, guilt, or habit formed from too many doors closed in her face. But June stirred and nuzzled her shoulder, and Alara's resolve wilted. A mother's heart recognized a child who needed her. "I'll stay," she whispered, almost as if afraid the word might change the air around them. Wyatt exhaled shakily, relief flooding every inch of him. He rummaged through the cupboard and set a warm bowl of stew beside her, along with bread and a blanket. Alara hesitated only a moment before hunger overtook hesitation. She ate, slowly at first, then with increasing urgency, tears streaming down her face as warmth spread through her body. "It's been so long since I've eaten a full meal," she choked out. "You'll have one every day here," Wyatt promised, voice firm and gentle all at once. The storm outside began to fade, its ferocity waning into a soft drizzle. Inside the cabin, warmth replaced fear, and a strange calm settled over the three of them. Alara finished eating, then curled protectively around June, who slept peacefully in her arms. Wyatt watched them, this starving mother who had become a lifeline, and his daughter who now breathed steady and strong. Something unspoken, fragile, but powerful hung in the air. Hope, and for the first time in weeks, Wyatt allowed himself to believe they all might survive this winter together. The sun rose slowly the next morning, spilling gold across the Wyoming plains and slipping through the cracks in Wyatt's cabin. It warmed the wooden floorboards, the rocking chair, the half-mended crib in the corner, and the small bundle sleeping peacefully in Alara's arms. June looked different already. Her cheeks had color again. Her breathing came soft and steady. Her tiny fingers curled around a lock of Alara's hair, clinging with newfound strength. And Alara, once hollow and trembling, now looked almost whole as she held the baby close, humming a tune that drifted through the quiet cabin like sunlight itself. Wyatt paused on the porch, watching them through the open door. His arms were full of logs for the stove, but he didn't move. Not for a long moment. Something inside him softened at the sight. Something warm and unfamiliar. He cleared his throat gently. Alara looked up, eyes bright though she hadn't slept much. But unlike before, unlike that night of desperation, hope glimmered there. "Morning," Wyatt said softly. "Morning," she replied, her voice still husky from the early hour. June wiggled, and Alara instinctively shifted her higher on her shoulder. Wyatt smiled, a real one, the first since Clara's passing. "You two sleep all right?" he asked. Alara brushed her cheek against June's soft head. "She woke twice, but she ate well, and she's stronger today. I can feel it." Wyatt nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "That's because of you." Alara looked down, shy but touched. He brought the logs inside, set them by the stove, and lit the fire. The smell of pine and smoke curled through the cabin. Alara watched him move, steady, quiet, a man who carried more weight than he let anyone see. After June fell back asleep, Wyatt stepped onto the porch to check the grazing fields. Alara followed him outside, leaning on the doorframe, watching him survey the land. Snow still dusted the mountains, but the plains were thawing. Spring would come soon. With it, life, if they could hold on until then. "You take care of all this alone?" she asked softly. Wyatt nodded. "Since Clara died, friends help sometimes, but folks have their own work." Alara's eyes lingered on the distant cattle. Then on his hands, calloused, cracked, the result of long hours and too little rest. "You must be exhausted," she murmured. He shrugged, trying to brush it off, but she saw right through him. "You don't have to pretend," she said gently. "I know what it looks like when someone is carrying more than they can bear." He turned toward her, meeting her gaze. There was no pity there, just understanding. The kind born from loss. The kind that didn't judge. Wyatt exhaled. "Some days, I didn't think we'd make it." June was fading so fast. And I had nothing left to give. Alara stepped closer, her hand hovering but not quite touching his arm. "You didn't fail her. You never did. You fought for her. That's why she's still here." Wyatt swallowed, emotion rising hard and fast. "And you," he said quietly, "you walked through a storm when you barely had the strength to stand. You saved my daughter's life." A tear slid down Alara's cheek. She brushed it away quickly, embarrassed. "I just didn't want my milk to go to waste." "That wasn't it," Wyatt said gently. "You came because you're a mother. Even after losing your child, that part of you never died." Alara's breath trembled. She looked at June, sleeping peacefully in a woven blanket, and the ache in her eyes softened into something warmer. Something healing. Wyatt went back inside and brought her a fresh bowl of stew. She ate slowly this time, not in desperation but in comfort. Afterward, she cleaned the table, rocked June when she cried, even mended a tear in Wyatt's coat without being asked. Hours passed like that, quietly, naturally, as though she belonged there. When afternoon settled, Wyatt found her on the porch with June curled against her chest. Alara stared out at the sprawling land, the mountains rising beyond, her expression thoughtful. "You're thinking of your boy," Wyatt said gently, approaching. Alara nodded. "Holding her helps, but it also reminds me. I thought that pain would swallow me whole. But here, with her, it doesn't hurt the same." Wyatt sank beside her, hands clasped loosely. "I don't want to replace what you lost. And I don't expect you to stay forever." Alara's lips parted, words caught between fear and longing. "I don't know where else I'd go," she admitted. "And I don't want to leave her." Wyatt turned toward her fully. "Then stay," he said softly. "Not just for June, for yourself too." Alara's breath hitched. "Wyatt," he held her gaze, steady and sincere. "I lost Clara. You lost your child. But maybe God put two broken souls in each other's paths and either had to stay broken." Tears filled her eyes, slow, silent, different from the tears she shed before. These weren't from grief. They were from possibility. June stirred, nestling deeper into Alara's warmth, her tiny hand fisting the fabric of Alara's dress as if claiming her. Alara kissed the baby's soft head, then whispered, voice trembling like a prayer, "If you'll have me, I'll stay." Wyatt's eyes burned. He reached out, covering her hand with his, gentle, careful. "As long as you want," he murmured. "As long as you need." The wind softened, the mountains glowed in the fading light. And the little cabin, once filled with loneliness, felt alive again. Not just a shelter. A beginning.